Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor who should be, at this very moment, on Lake Seneca in a kayak. But we got rained out. Instead, I'm going to talk to you about an album by HAIM called Women in Music Part 3. Now, I am a real professor, despite what many of the people who dislike this channel say, and that gives me some amount of authority in several fields. I am not, however, a real music critic. This is a hobby, and part of the reason that I do this show is that I love exploring bands that I've heard of but don't know anything about. There could not be a better example than the band HAIM. I had no idea who they were or what they were. First time I saw their name, I thought, oh, the teen actor Corey Haim has been making music. No, that's not the case. He sadly killed himself a few years ago. Then I saw that they were a group of women, and I somehow got them mixed up with maybe some other pop group of women from England. So I thought they were like some female version of 1975, and that was all wrong. And then today, or yesterday, I saw their album came out, and that gave me a chance. And as always, what I do is I listen to an album, and I do about 5 minutes of research. And immediately I saw something interesting about them, which is that they are based on three sisters. And so, oh, that's why they're called HAIM. Are they related to Corey Haim? I don't know. Did you know that I recorded a song once called E True Hollywood Story, all about Corey Haim? It's true. It's unfindable. It's in my solo catalog, which I think I will reveal if I ever get 10,000 subscribers. You'll get to hear Professor Skye's music when I was an angry, angry young man. But this, I listened to this album and I went back and forth about whether or not I was going to review it, because there were parts of it that I loved, and there's parts of it that I just couldn't get behind. And I don't believe in giving negative reviews. I think it's boring. I think we need to celebrate artists and build them up as opposed to trying to put them down. And so I was really on the fence. And it was only on the second listen to the entire album that I realized that it is a delightfully wonderful album. Now, this is what I came to realize. The things that I like, well, I love the story. I love the idea that they're sisters and that they make out music together. I like any sibling group. I have 2 children. I would love for them to make a band. I love the name of the album, Women in Music Part 3. I like the idea that that's sort of a brave sort of statement that makes you think, is this going to be a feminist treatise? It's not really. But it's just the fact that 3 women are making music. Is that a treatise in and of itself? Okay. And ultimately what brought me to them and what convinced me that not only do I like them, but I like them a lot, is that their songwriting is excellent. The lyrics are very simple. They're not fancy, they're not poetically fancy, but they're very straightforward and they are clever while also being heartfelt. And if you can write simply, sorry, there's a chipmunk on my porch. Every once in a while I see a chipmunk, I get distracted like my dogs. Chipmunk! If you can write lyrics and have them be simple and powerful and clever all at the same time, you are at the top level of lyric writing. And that's the kind of lyrics that they're writing here. And just in general, the way their songwriting goes, it's very strong. I would say that they are sort of a very modern group in the way that they're genreless. They go between all different. If I had to give one genre, I don't think I could. One song, and then you hear a different song. It's almost like you get whiplash in between them. And I realized what it is that I don't like. And this came from my 5 minutes of research. They list their influences, and I don't really like their influences. So based on what I've heard in this album, and based on what I read, as far as I can tell, their number one influence is Fleetwood Mac. I don't know why, I just don't like Fleetwood Mac. I respect them, I don't hate them, I would never go on a tirade. If someone says that Fleetwood Mac is their favorite band, I'd be like, cool, why? But that as a starting point was a bit weird to me. I also hear a lot of Paul Simon. Again, I respect Paul Simon, but I don't love him. And then there's this other added element, which I do like, but adds this mysterious flavor to all of their music, which is sort of 90s R&B and soul, particularly sort of like female-led groups like En Vogue or Destiny's Child. As far as I can tell, this band is if you took sort of Destiny's Child and Fleetwood Mac and put them in Jackson Browne's pool house, because it has a very sort of Southern California laid-back feel. That's what this band is. And those are all, that's a pretty good concoction. That's a really nice equation. I wonder about the production. At times I love the production, and other times I don't. And when I don't like it is when it feels too down the middle. Like, there's music that's genreless because it's very brave and all over the place. But sometimes if things jump between genres, it can actually be bland. And at times this music does feel bland to me, but not much. And it's usually saved by the next track, which is more interesting. So this is the point in my videos where I usually go track by track, and I will. But I think this is where I'm really going to get into the band, because as I've been saying, you can't really get a sense of the whole album by just listening to one song. The first track on the album is what drew me into them, Los Angeles. It's all based on the drums. I have a little theory that because they're all sisters, that one plays bass, one plays drums, the other sings, maybe plays guitar. Because they're sisters, they're equals. So there's a lot of great drumming on this album, a lot of great bass that feels really like up front. And I think that if this were just some, one famous female singer and then people in the background, they wouldn't be brought up. So I love it when the drums are really strong and really put forward. And the drumming is great, by the way, on this album. It's my favorite style of drumming, actually, which is competent, funky, but not too busy, and just not flashy at all. Right? No drum solos, but just great drum beats. And the whole album starts off with Los Angeles, this great drum beat. There's sort of like, at the end it kind of devolves into sort of like a weird reggae ska sounding thing, like all the guitars are on the offbeats, and it almost reminds me of that Sugar Ray song. Now that sounds like I'm making fun of it, but let's all admit that I Just Wanna Fly is a great song, and it sets a great atmosphere, and it's part of that kind of Southern California feel that HAIM is able to get us. Also, in addition, you have some nice crowd noises that gives a good atmosphere. So, as I've said, I can't give you an idea of the breadth of the scope of this album. I had never listened to a single second of HAIM before yesterday morning when I started listening to this album. I wonder how much of this is representative of their work. But this is a good example of one song which only about a third of the album sounds like. But just listen to the drums and the singing and the production and the interesting rhythms. So here is Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, give me a miracle, I just want out from this. I've done my share of helping with your defense, but now
I do like the idea that she's talking about having to defend Los Angeles. I lived in Los Angeles for about a year and a half, and you do spend a lot of time when you live in Los Angeles defending it. A good example of the kind of clever lyrics, and also the voice is just very piercing and very clear. And there's a lot of harmonies between the three sisters, but thankfully that's not the centerpiece. Too often when you have groups that can harmonize, the harmonies take over, and it becomes like a harmony show. Like you're watching Glee or something. I don't know anything about Glee. Why did I say that? It's like you're just watching some kind of harmony show, which this doesn't do. Harmony is actually used very sparingly and very well. That's not on my notes. I just came up with that right now, so I think it's true. And I was criticizing the production. I would like to compliment the production because having people who can harmonize and not having them harmonize on every song is an absolute blessing. So that's just a great song. It then leads into the song The Steps, which is very much a Motown influence on this album as well. Almost as like a My Girl style melody with just a lead guitar playing it. But then she reminds me a little bit, and a lot of this album reminds me of listening to Sheryl Crow, which I never did. I never listened to Sheryl Crow. I never took her seriously. And I was thinking about that this morning, and I was like, oh, why could that be? Oh, because I'm a sexist pig. That's why. That's why I didn't take her seriously. I mean, I didn't mean to. I didn't think that's why. I saw her open up for the Rolling Stones and everything. But I think I need to revisit a lot of the female artists that I didn't intentionally boycott because they were female. But subconsciously, like deep in the back of my mind, I discredited them and discounted them. And it pains me to admit this. And I admit this very often on this channel. But it's an important thing to get over. And part of the reason why albums like this album by HAIM is so strong and so good is maybe with the smooth production and the cute story about them being sisters, you could just kind of dismiss it. But you really, really shouldn't. This is a great example of their wonderful lyrics, talking about, I've been taking steps and you keep on getting mad that I'm making a mess. So great, amazing idea about trying to improve yourself, and then the partner that you're with is upset because it's a messy process to improve yourself. Okay, I'm throwing myself on your mercy, internet. Name another song that talks about that element of a relationship. I can't think of one. And I love songs that are very clearly about real relationships. I'm improving myself, and you're upset because it's a messy process. Oh my God, it happened. Look, I'm getting actual goosebumps because that's such a good lyric. It's actually happening. I'm not even joking. It's just great. And she just keeps on saying, I can't understand why you don't understand. This feels like a real relationship really happening. These are conversations I have had throughout my life. You know, it's not so much like the throwing the glasses against the table and screaming and jealousy or all this, but just this. I've been taking steps and you're mad that I'm making a mess. It's just really nice. They repeat the choruses a lot, which makes me put this sort of more in the pop category in general, just the amount they repeat the choruses, but the choruses are always really quite nice. The next track, I Know Alone, is another great lyric. I keep saying great. This is a problem. I need to have other words of saying good. Oh well. When I heard this, my initial take was that it was maybe a little bit too glossy, a little bit too smooth. But then at the end, there's this great kind of breakdown in the bridge where the synthetic instruments and the acoustic instruments mix together, and then it drops out, and these distorted strings come in, and then the chorus comes in, and then the same chorus that at the beginning I didn't like, I ended up loving. Kind of studio magic there. Once again, I said I was going to be criticizing the production, but that's like the fourth time I've said something good about it. So there you go. Next track, Up From a Dream. It's a little bit goofy because it has all these sound effects. Like it opens up with her yawning, being like, ugh, and then there's seagulls because she's dreaming about being on the beach. But it's good. It's interesting. I would say that this is the track that made me think of Paul Simon. Maybe the way the drums, the toms seem to be running things. And the way that she sings with a kind of half smile, almost like a friendly smirk, the way Paul Simon does. I hear that in here. But then also it sort of reminds me of Black Skinheads by Kanye as well, just in terms of the toms. So if you could mix together Black Skinheads and a Paul Simon song, that would be another interesting Frankenstein creation. But really a nice song, and really quite nice, even though I don't enjoy listening to Paul Simon. I respect Paul Simon, but I don't particularly enjoy it. I actually think if I didn't spend 2 hours listening to this album very carefully, that would be my summation of HAIM. You know, like the kind of music that might be in my friend's mom's car. And I wouldn't turn it off and say, oh, this is garbage. But I'd just sort of be like, nah. But fortunately, thanks to this channel, I force myself to take it seriously like it deserves to be. The next track, Gasoline, is another great drum track. I just get this. I don't know what the birth order is of the sisters. Because I'm the youngest and I'm a drummer, I imagine the youngest is the drummer, being like, hey, let me get a song. There's kind of a sultry voice on here, a very smooth chorus, very well layered, all the instruments on here. This is the second song this year where love and gasoline are mixed together. There's Kerosene by Yves Tumor. I don't know why. Lots of really cool guitars in the background as well. All throughout the album, I would say that guitar work is special. It's worth paying attention to if you listen to this album. The amount of different ways that guitar is used, the different effects. At times it's very metallic, at times it's very twangy, at times there's like a 12-string guitar. It seems as though there's a lot of great guitar work very consciously being put on here without it ever being particularly flashy. This is the song that is the most, Gasoline has the most Jackson Browne vibe, and out of all the influences that I detect, Jackson Browne is the one that I actually listen to. I love Jackson Browne. I don't know why I love Jackson Browne and don't love Fleetwood Mac. Who knows? The ears want what the ears want. Then we get to the track 3 a.m. and that's where you're like, what? I don't, what is this? This is where HAIM changed the radio channel to 90s R&B classics, and it became a Destiny's Child song. Even down to like, there's one part where they have like a string sound and they extend it out over an extra couple measures. And it's good. it's just very jarring. So the first time I heard it, I was like, what is this junk? And the second time I was like, huh. And then by the third time I was like, cool. This is like listening to 3 different albums at once. The next track, Don't Wanna, absolutely one of my favorites. It's cool because it's got this minimalist bass. This is the sense where I get the bass player is like, hey, I need to be here. Kind of a minimalist bass with a voice. And again, the chorus that's used is just sparsely brought in, where you have a little bit of harmony brought in the chorus. And it's sort of a better version of this kind of 90s R&B mode. And it's great because it starts minimally, but it ends maximally with the 90s style R&B guitar. There's horns, and it's a great breakup song. Maybe she's talking about the person who she was breaking up with in track 2, Steps, and saying how she doesn't want to end up in strangers' beds. I really think it's important that we recognize the excellence of lyrics like this, because it's so painful. You know, breakups are really painful. It's a really human experience. And she don't wanna, I don't wanna, that's what it's called. But don't wanna end up in strangers' beds. Said by someone with lesser talent or less charisma, or I don't know what she's doing to sing it this well. It would sound like a threat. Ugh, I wouldn't want to end up in some stranger's bed. But it's really about the sadness of the intimacy that they're losing. Again, there are songs I could think of, I imagine if you gave me some time, where I talk about the sadness of a breakup is the loss of intimacy. But to put it in here in this very well constructed song and have it be kind of breezy and really well produced, the production's excellent on this album. I don't know what I was saying in the beginning. It's really a feat, and part of why I call them a great songwriting group. The next track is called Another Try, and that sucks. That song's bad. I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry, HAIM fans who might be watching. It's not a good song. Let me tell you why, okay? There's a band in the 80s that some people forget existed called UB40. They were a British band that did soft rock covers of songs in a light reggae style. I don't know why they were so popular, but they were the worst. And this song sounds like a UB40 outtake. True story, at my brother's wedding, my oldest brother's wedding, I stayed in the same hotel as UB40. I didn't harass them or anything. So that track is just bad. It was when I heard that track the first time that I said, I can't review this, I'm just going to be making fun of it. But just that one track is bad. Next track, Leaning on You, is almost a sort of a country-focused style song. I mean, if you listen to 3 a.m. and then Leaning on You, it's hard to believe it's the same band, at least to me, as someone who's listening to them for the first time. But it has a nice instrumental breakdown. They have a producer. I'm going to try and get his name right. I wrote it down in my notes. Rostam Batman Glee. It's a Persian name with the word Batman in it. It seems like he's doing a lot of heavy lifting on this album, because when you read the credits, there's a lot of he's doing a lot of the guitar work, a lot of the production, and this song feels the most like maybe they're letting their producer have fun and do more interesting things. Next track, I've Been Down, is kind of a rootsy rock song, has a spoken breakdown, really nice funky drum beat, there's almost a break beat actually in the middle of the song where the drum plays and they have these nice claps. And I've spent a lot of time talking about how the lyrics are underrated. I imagine that this drummer is underrated as well. And then there's a saxophone solo, which is great. This song goes all over the place, and that's something they're able to do on the album as a whole, going between genres, but also the way the production's done, you'll start one place and you'll end somewhere else, and you will have taken an interesting journey to get there. Next track is Man from the Magazine. Okay, let's have Skye admit some more sexism. This reminds me a lot of Joni Mitchell, and for some reason, I've never liked Joni Mitchell. I suspect that I don't like Joni Mitchell out of some kind of weird misogyny in my head. Because objectively, her guitar playing's great, her melodies are great, her songwriting's great, her themes are great. Every artist that I love loves her. So this track helps me to connect with the things that I imagine I will eventually learn to love about Joni Mitchell once I pay attention to it. Very earnest, piercing lyrics, almost acrobatic chord changes, just going on and on and on and on. And this is nice because it's a more raw song and it's much more welcome. I mean, like, that's welcome to me at this point in the album. And I also like the lyrics, I don't want to hear it is what it is. Because it is what it is something that you only say when you're being unhelpful. The next track, All That Ever Mattered, is my favorite production on the album. It's almost like an 80s soft rock song, but it's beautiful. And they destroy everything by having the chorus and having these screams in the background. It's insane. It's this insane production choice that completely works and makes this song, you know, all that ever matters was you, all that ever matters. It's a fascinating choice that I really appreciate. The final track is called FUBT, which means effed up but true. And this is just a guitar with some chorus on it and singing. At least that's how it starts. It seems almost underproduced. And again, there's a second singer who will come in and maybe even a third to harmonize, but it's used sparingly. And then some keyboards come in and then drum solo, and then drum machine, and then the guitar solo. And the previous track too, Not That Ever Mattered, there's like a metallic guitar solo. By the end, you're kind of pumped up. So lots of great dynamics and motion all throughout the album. I'm not going to review the bonus tracks. I'm just not going. If you call it a bonus track, I'm just not going to listen to you because you're throwing it on there for the super fans, and I just learned to appreciate HAIM. So there you go. There's my review. I think it's quite a good album, and I look forward to listening to them. If you are one of those super fans who can't believe I've never heard of them, and I can't believe I don't know their names and all that stuff, what would you like me to know about HAIM? It's one of my favorite things to ask on this channel is, you know, what should I know? And, you know, subscribe. Jesus. I don't do that. I said I was never going to do that. Don't subscribe. Or do what you want. I don't care. All right. Well, we're about to watch Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 with my family, which is what we do, and we can't kayak. You don't? So for Freddy Krueger, Nancy Thompson, there's the camera.